And welcome to this seminar dealing with governance in the Arctic. This seminar is a part of a big research project called ArcGov. It means that it has to do with governance in the Arctic. And we are focusing especially on China. China is not a part of the Arctic Council. It's not a member of the Arctic Council, but has shown interest for the Arctic. And we are very happy that we have this seminar with participants not only from Norway, but also from China. And I hope that some of you in China are now close to us digitally. I would have wished that the world was something else than it is today in many aspects. And then you could have come here. But hopefully you could follow the seminar and that we soon can meet. And I'm very happy for all of you who have taken the time to be here at Stormen Library. We are in a closed room. There are not so many windows. But for those who are not present here, you should know that when you go out of this room, you will see a wonderful, a very great library. It is an open atmosphere where you could pick up books and ideas from a lot of different disciplines and from a lot of different places in the world. So this is the right place to have such a seminar. In Norway, we have also something we called the Research Days, and that they are initiated by the Norwegian Research Council. And they start today. So in all Norway, we are only about 5 million people, but in all Norway, we focus on research from today and until beginning of October. So we are very happy to be a part of that. So this seminar is not only organized as a project event, but also as an event in the Research Days of Norway. We are very happy that all who we asked, they said that they will come and participate. Then there have been some changes. So if you saw the first draft of the program, there are some changes. Something is due to illness and something is due to changes in workloads and so on. But we will have three different, let's say, sections of this seminar. And in the first section, we focus most on perspective from research. In the second part of this seminar, we focus especially on the project ArcGov, Governance in the Arctic. And in the third section, we are so happy that we will include business perspective. And you should know that in these research days that we are a part of, the idea is to bring research closer to people and closer to society at all, in all. So it means that this seminar has all these aspects that we try to discuss important aspects of our research with a broader audience. And at the same time, we try to include not only researchers in our seminar. I would have wished that we could be there. This is a picture from Shanghai. And two of our partners, they are in Shanghai. We can't be there, but we will talk about also what they are focusing on. So we will come into that. But today we are in the city of Bodø. And here we are located together with all the important institutions in the city. And one very important institution is Nord University. And Nord University has 5 faculties. And Bodø, the business school of Nord University is one of them. And I am the director of the High North Center for Business and Governance that is a part of Nord University Business School. Therefore, we were very happy when the dean of the business school accepted our invitation. She has a very tight schedule, and it's the research sales in Norway. So I think all deans are running around to take part in different research seminars. But Gry also, she said that she would be together with us. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce you, Gry, and the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Frode, for that. I would like to welcome you all to this seminar. It's so great to see that that both scholars and industry and also students are gathered together here, both in the room and also digitally. I think we thereby are using the benefits of the modern world to actually join together and discuss important topics. So I'm really happy to see that. It has been a long and also strong tradition of Norway University Business School to have an international overview to the world, particularly relating to industry and business activities, but also political aspects, and also in particularly related to the Arctic. So on this opening day of the Norwegian Research Festival 2022, as Frode mentioned, what is then more relevant than taking this global perspective and putting the light on the role of China in the global value chain with a particularly emphasis on the Arctic. We have learned, and a lot of you in the room know more about this than I do, but we have learned, I think, that for a long time, but particularly so the last few years, that the role of China plays a key role, not only in the Arctic, but in the world. And in the current situation, there are questions and uncertainty about the Arctic, and there are also questions and uncertainty about our relationship to China. And I think that I look forward to seeing the discussion on these topics today. We have a very interesting program. At least when I looked through it, it looked very interesting to me. So I really hope you will have a good discussion and good knowledge and learn a lot from each other today. So I just wish you the best of luck for the seminar today, and I will stay listening for a while.
Thank you very much, Gry. And I know that the program is very good. I have seen at least some of the slides that you all will see. When we were preparing this, we said that people were allowed to use some slides, not too many, but some have used many and others have used a few. But they look very interesting. Now we will go into the first section. And the first section is about research and focusing on the research, some aspects of the research connected to China. And we are so happy that Gørild Heggelund, she is a part of our project. She's a part of the ArcGov project, but we are so happy that you also have said yes to moderate the first session. And we could not have a more competent person. Gørild has been working with China, even though she is quite young. All people are young with my eyes. But Gørild has really been working for many, many years with Chinese issues and has been living in China for 16 years. And has been doing research connected to a lot of aspects that China has of interest and shown interest for, not at least in the Arctic. So, Gørild, you should add a few more things about yourself. I have said to the others that introduce yourself if I have missed something, and I have for sure done that. But I'm very happy to give you the floor and that you could inform what is coming now. So please, Gørild. And an applause to Gørild just coming.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and also good morning to everybody who's online. Thank you, Frode, for that kind introduction. It is true that I have worked with China for I don't know how many decades, since the 80s, I guess, when I started to study Chinese at the University of Oslo and then continued in China as a student. So I have followed this country for several decades, and the developments have been amazing in China, as we know, in many ways, both with regard to the living standards, and I work on environment and climate change and energy issues related to China. We know that China has some issues or challenges with regard to environment and also climate, and also China has also become increasingly interested in the Arctic, and that is also something that we are working on at Fridtjof Nansen Institute. But first, I will speak later today, but first I will introduce one also very famous China scholar in Norway, and that is Hans-Jørgen Gåsemyr, who is a senior researcher at the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. So let me just say a few words about all his achievements, because they are not few. So his background is social science and Chinese language and area studies from Norwegian and Chinese universities. He has an MA and PhD degrees in political science from the Department of Comparative Politics of the University of Bergen. Gåsemyr has previously worked for the United Nations in Beijing, and he has experience from national broadcasting. And his main research area is Chinese politics, primarily domestic socio-economic reforms and foreign policy concerning international organizations. His secondary research focus is Norwegian and European policy changes regarding trade, investment, and knowledge relations, mainly in connection to China-related developments and digital technology. And many of you may have seen Hans in the media commenting on Chinese developments and writing opinion pieces in Norwegian newspapers. So he's a great China scholar in Norway, and we welcome him. And the floor is yours, Hans. An applause for Hans, yes.
Wow, thank you so much for very cool and nice and generous introductions. I think I'll start to say that I'm very happy to be here and also be honest enough to say that one of the reasons I said yes to coming here is because I have very fond memories from Bodø and from what used to be the university college that later emerged into Nord University. Of course, today I used to study journalism back in the early 2000s here. And for everyone who is from Bodø or used to being here, of course, know there is a lot to love, including a lot of weather, whether you like wind or snow or endless chill and nice summer nights during the spring and summer. Today, I'm not going to focus on Arctic issues. And that's not because I don't find them interesting or I don't have anything to say, but there are loads of people here in the room who just simply know more. So I will talk more about the more general level and the global change on kind of a truly global scale. And particularly on issues dealing with what we call knowledge intensive or research intensive type of sectors, which I here call the brainy value chain, because it's not only about the values and the products, but the ones that really require research and innovation and technology. And in my own work, I'm particularly focused on digital and digital technology issues. And that's one of the reasons for that, of course, is that it's something that everyone needs, that all major power really tries to get better at, that definitely all developing countries desperately need access to. But digital technology is, of course, in the very center of the storm of the competition and the increasing rivalry between the US and China. So it's also, as a political science and China-focused researcher, is, of course, also a very kind of cool focus. But to start on a more, a more kind of personal and everyday level, I start here. This is a spring day in the city of Xiamen in 2018. It happens to be actually the day when the Norwegian minister, who was then the Norwegian Minister of Research, landed in Beijing, and I was supposed to be there and partake in some activities. And I called my colleagues and I said, hey, I'm just going to hang out here in Xiamen for one more day, and I will join you tomorrow in Shanghai. And then I was preparing something similar to what I'm doing today, a lecture, which was coming up a couple of weeks afterwards, which was about how digitalization and digital technology use was spreading in China. And instead then of sitting back in my hotel and writing down the slides, I went out and I just took pictures of all the type of very simple and accessible, but very kind of normal digital technologies that were available, just walking through the city of Xiamen for a couple of hours that day. And I'm not going to walk you through the route here because we don't have enough time, but you could, of course, access any type of public service, of course, buy lots of types of tickets, even get your toilet paper in one of the parks in Xiamen from a stalling machine that worked on QR codes. And of course, nowadays, these types of technologies are very commonplace all over the world, also in Norway. But this is one of the areas where China was very early and very advanced, and simple daily solutions for technical or digital kind of payment solutions and transportation access solutions were very average on a very kind of early day. So in many ways, China is already a superpower when it comes to digital technology resources. And we see that, of course, in some of the companies that Chinese have built, and some of them are, of course, present internationally, but they are by far the biggest in China. So anything that has to do with kind of digital services, applications on computers or apps, fancy social media, that is, of course, very strictly controlled, but also very advanced when it comes to user friendliness and popularity within China. And this is just a picture of some of them connected to a brief I wrote last year of some of these developments. And in some of the fields, these companies are, of course, also very big internationally. Huawei, for instance, has been a very major player in the establishment and expansion of digital networks all over the world, also in Norway, of course, up to the day when it no longer was considered secure enough to use Chinese technology for those means. And if you look at your phones, your mobile phones that you have with you today, if it's not an Apple phone or an iPhone or a Korean Samsung, there's a very high chance that you are sitting there with a Chinese phone or a China-made phone that you don't even probably be aware that it's actually a Chinese brand. But as everyone knows who has been following the news recently, also know that Chinese digital technology is under much stricter regulation nowadays than used to be, where the authorities are trying to rein in some of the monopoly tendencies and kind of regain control. But it, as I said, is also in the midst of the rivalry and the conflict, of course, internationally, and particularly between the US and China, where we also talk about real decoupling happening in some fields. And that's what the pictures are supposed to illustrate. And that has complications already for a lot of value chains, especially the brainy value chains that I'm most interested in. And there are, of course, several reasons for this. And one of the reasons is just basically economics. And here I have a slide that Frode mentioned. I don't really need you, or you don't really need to study the slides. It's very much okay if you feel a bit tired and just want to focus on what I say. But if you want to look at the slides, just look at the general picture. I don't really need to go into details on any of them. But this is a slide of some of the countries that are the biggest exporters of goods. The countries in the world that export the most of what they manufacture. And this slide goes up to around 2006 and 2007. And if you were to guess in 2007, where is China? And the other countries on that slide is the US and Germany, Great Britain, Japan, and India. Which one is China? Anyone who wants to say? Frode, he is an economist professor, so he probably does know. And that is true. It is the dark blue. And look at where China has headed 10 years later. It has kicked off and, of course, become by far and beyond the biggest exporter of manufactured goods. And some of it, what is even more interesting, if you look at some of the sectors in which those goods are produced, if you look at the so-called high-tech goods sector, which is made up of products that require a certain level of technology or knowledge-intensive investment, China has really kicked off, while the rest of the big countries have more or less stayed the same. And that's, of course, a very big reason for why the increased competition and rivalry has really sharpened in the last few years. It's because China has gotten very big and very good at doing very many things, which of course complicates a lot of stuff internationally, because obviously it's not only a question of competition in the marketplace, but also about how different countries feel that their national industries are protected or are strong enough to keep up with the competition, and that national security interests are kept at bay. So that's a big combination of competition and security issues that we see playing out in how the global brainy value chains are being monitored and also managed in these days, which I will talk more about. And now we have been talking about so far trade in goods, and we already see quite a few reactions in several countries when it comes to stricter regulations. From the US part, direct sanctions against quite a few Chinese companies that have supposed strong links either to the military or the Communist Party. And of course also sanctions now against American companies that provide some of the necessary goods to Chinese companies, and particularly in some of those components, including semiconductors, or what we commonly refer to as chips. So those reactions and disruptions into the global value chains are already happening, but we don't yet know to what extent they will have an impact. Another issue that I find increasingly interest is if you also look beyond the goods, but look at the digital or the digitech-related services. Some countries are also starting to really build capacity. And in some of those services, it's not China, but it's actually India that is by far the biggest. Most of it relatively basic services, but also the management of relatively complex data systems that have a lot of information within them. And that will also become, and is already becoming, a global issue of increasing controversy, because China is, of course, also building capacity, or its companies are, in some of the digital services, for instance, cloud storage services, both to commercial actors and big governments around the world. Then, if we move on and look at another activity or sector or type of action, it's global investments. And there again, China has moved from 15 years ago being a relatively or very small and modest actor to becoming a very noticeable actor internationally. The big kind of top thus far from the perspective of Chinese investments is in 2016, where you have the yellow kind of arrow pointing to it. From then on, it has slowed down somewhat, and also in some markets increased. But in some European countries, and definitely in most developing countries around the world, China is by far the biggest contributor both of investments and also of loans and credits. So it is a very substantial player in terms of international financing already, which is of course also leading to reaction and responses from countries. We have enhanced and new security or screening mechanisms for investments. We also have sanctions again in some countries against certain type of investments. And of course, we all know the story around the debate and the pressure and the decisions around not allowing Huawei to keep building digital networks, and in particular the 5G network in many countries around the world, including in Norway, where Huawei built a lot of the 4G network, but is not able to do the same type of activity for the 5G network because of national regulations, which happen all over Europe and in a lot of NATO-allied countries. The third type of activity or action is in what we do ourselves, knowledge production or research and educational activities. And this is a slide from which I made, just counting some of the terms that are the biggest buzzwords and kind of the hot topics in the 5-year plans that China has made since 2006. And you can see some interesting features. If you look back, for instance, to 2006, then it was technology that was really the high buzzword. Invest and build and steer and grow and gain capacity within basic technologies. And then if you go down to 2016, it was innovation. That was a very big word. And if you go down to the last 5-year plan, which was agreed upon last year, it's digital and digitalization and digital technology that takes most of the attention. And China is, of course, already investing a lot and is already either at the front or emerging very closely to the very front internationally when it comes to some research disciplines, for instance, artificial intelligence, robotics, supercomputing, biometrics, and several other key industries or research fields when it comes to digital technology. And that also has some reactions internationally. And that's also because if you see at another slide, the same countries that are compared to earlier that uses the most money or invests the most in research and development capacities, both in the industries and at the universities, China is not yet at the very top, but is very quickly moving upwards to be also world leading when it comes to spending most money on research and development activities. And keep in mind that China is, and I would argue, in many ways still a developing country. So those resources are still divided on lots and lots of people, while the other countries at the top now are, of course, at a higher level of, or a stronger level of kind of economic development. But China is then again, of course, moving very quickly. And in that field too, we see international reactions to in Europe and in the US and within NATO and other kind of allied structures. Well, also countries are kind of sharpening their security laws, sharpening their export regulations. The EU has passed a very strict Transparency Act, which is copied in Norway. And we see generally, if you look at the security authorities in most of these European, including Norway, they have sharper and stronger messages every year of keeping and watching out and protecting systems and protecting technologies from the Chinese state or Chinese state actors getting access. So that's also a complicating part of the global brainy value change. And then to bring us a bit closer to home and to finish off with something that relates both to Norway and to the Arctic, I came up with this picture, which is from, I think, January 2019. And I wish it was from Bodø, but I was not in Bodø in January 2019, but I was in another city. And if anyone can see what's on that kind of, on the flag or the the banner on the flag, it says 世界上最北边的唐人街, and that's the world's furthest north Chinatown. And they happen to have a very cool festival arranging in the city of Kirkenes in January 2009, which I'll recommend Bodø to copy, of course, because it was very cool. But to move from that to what's happening then in some of the similar kind of investment or trade activities in Norway, we can also see that the same type of developments that China is, of course, contributing to internationally is also happening here. And this slide is not all the goods that are exported from China, but goods that are imported to Norway from these same countries, but only in the field of electronics. And electronics is one of the main import products that Norway gets from China. And most of it is laptops, computers, and mobile phones. Another big import good that has really increased the last couple of years is cars and electronic cars, where China has gotten very big, which of course has a lot of digital technology within them. While Norway keeps exporting to China mainly fish and oil and some other resources. So it's kind of cool that what we buy from China is relatively high-tech product, but what we export to China is a lot of natural or natural-related resources. If you look at the investment numbers, that's also kind of interesting to see that China has moved from being a very small investor in the Norwegian market, which parallels the European market, to becoming a much more noticeable one. Not a huge one, but a more noticeable one. And in terms of investment numbers, one of the indicators that I often use as my favorite, because I think it says the most, is the number of people working for companies owned by different countries. Not the amount of money that's invested, because that's hard to measure in an accurate way because it fluctuates, but the actual number of people in Norway who work for companies, in this case, that are owned by Chinese owners. And there you can see a relatively big increase, especially from around 2015 and up to 2019. And you can see a dip then from last year, which we are still excited to see what's really about, which maybe we can discuss more today. But we can also see parallels if we compare it to other countries on the similar type of indicator or variable. You see that the same type of dip is also visible for other countries. So we are yet to see whether the very kind of positive growth of Chinese investments into the Norwegian market will increase, or if it has kind of hit its threshold for some time and might stabilize or decrease in the future years. So that's also interesting to follow. And quite a few Chinese investments have also gone into Norwegian digital technology companies. And it's also fair to say that quite a few of the Chinese investments have proven to be very profitable, or into companies that have developed quite nicely after Chinese bought them. And then lastly, in the field of research and education, we also see that Norway in many ways parallel developments around the world. And more Chinese, young, brilliant, ambitious, clever, smart, some of them funny, also find their way to Norwegian universities. And some of them might be sitting here or might be listening in. And sadly enough, this is not a picture of Nord University. Some of you might wish it was. But it's a picture of Chinese youth from Nanjing, actually, out looking for jobs, recent graduates, just to give kind of an impression of how many wonderful talents are out there. And more of them have also found their way to Norway. And Chinese are by far now the largest group of also foreign students in Norway. If you consider students who stay for a longer period of time and study for degrees and not just a part of kind of short-term exchange programs. So I think I'll finish up on kind of that note, a little kind of glimpse into the global brainy value chains and how they are being affected and disrupted. I think to all of us who deal with China, whether it is in terms of facilitating investments or trading with China and doing business with China, or those of us engaged in research and education with Chinese partners, we have to be prepared for our relations to gain more attention and more scrutiny, and also for it to become increasingly complicated to navigate in a territory where we will always have to balance the benefits, including economic benefits, and national security interests, for which quite strong groups and of course parts of the authorities really want us to show more responsibility and stay kind of more protected. So that's a very interesting development to follow as somebody as me who research it, and some of you other guys will have to deal with it because you work for companies or you run universities and so forth. So I finish on that note, asking the question whether the future is bright or we're moving towards a darker and decoupled kind of reality in the next few years. Thank you.
Okay, Hans, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. I mean, you went through so many important areas from the Chinese side. I mean, from digitalization, I mean, to import, export, technologies, research, development, and your important questions at the end. Where are we? Oops, what happened? Where are we going? Is it bright or not? The future. We will save the questions for later, I mean, after the second presentation, if that's okay with everybody. So now it's the next presenter is Frode Nilssen. He's a professor at Nordland University and the Business School at the High North Center for Business and Governance. So most of his research has been committed to international trade and marketing within the frames of economic and governance issues related to food trade in particular. And main topics for his research interest relate to the tension between economic behavior, bilateral and multilateral governance and politics in international food trade and exploitation of natural resources. Frode Nilssen has been engaged in these topics through different arenas in his career and has acted as professor in marketing for many years. And he's currently also research professor at the Fridtjof Nansen Institute, where I also work. And he's head of the research department for marketing, strategy and management at the Bodø Graduate School of Business. So the floor is yours, Frode. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for this nice introduction. I will not use any slides, so you can either choose to look at that or look at me or look another way. That's all up to you. I was thinking China, and we can use some metaphors. China and the global value chain, so the rise of the dragon or whatever we should say. If we use that, we can also lean on, towards some conspiracy theory. So what are the real intentions of China now? All these offensive strategies that they pursue. Are there any hidden agendas, and how do we relate to this? I don't know if it is neither necessary or sensible to use conspiracy theory. I will run you through some reasoning, and at the end I will ask some questions which I hope that you can answer, not only me. Seen from Norway, and perhaps also mainland Europe, China represents something very, very different in many respects. Over time we have seen a picture of this huge superpower, scaring, exciting, powerful, attractive. encircled by a touch of exotic mystery, perhaps, anecdotal narratives and stories, and of course a great power. Some might also see China as one of the contemporary global powers or superpower states and leading hegemons. The image and role of China as one of the global power states among the five, United States, Europe, Japan, Russia, and China, is definitely not new. But the view of classical national security tension based on the relationship between political, military, economic power struggle between these states primarily belong to history, I would claim. We do not, notwithstanding, see clear elements of this still. And the former classical situation with large superpowers in terms of military force are still present, as you know. The situation today is, however, slightly different, I would suggest. And the reason for this is, as you heard from Hans here, the economic world has become increasingly more open. And the second argument is that the role of military power is less conspicuous. This view is perhaps difficult for you to accept now, as China is leading towards Taiwan, and Russia still cling on to her aggression against Ukraine, I'm sorry about that. But the power and independence relations has changed over time. And the situation today is different. Some of the key explanations for this is the strengthening and supranational institutions in the world, such as the United Nations, the WTO, NATO, EU, to mention a few. This has been instrumental towards the development of an international mutually accepted acknowledgement of institutions, representing the rules of the game for international business and international collaboration. As a result, we see much more open economy today, where trade flows along global value chains to a much larger extent than before. But back to China. This scaring, exciting, powerful, attractive superstate. Taking a few steps back, China is perhaps one of the oldest societies on the globe, or civilization, whatever you should prefer. It's hard to say how old Chinese culture is, actually, but one of the oldest that still has a presence in modern world. Legends claim that the earliest rulers in China were the, what is the right pronunciation, Xia dynasty, perhaps? From 2100 to 1600 before Christ, with Yu as the first emperor. But there is little proof that the dynasty actually existed, so we have to rely on this history. But it is in any case perhaps at least the oldest societies on the globe. In 125 before Christ, the Silk Road appeared, following capture and escape during a mission from Emperor Wu. And he returned back to China with a map 13 years later. And he was drawing the route that he had covered, reaching as far as to Afghanistan. His maps were accurate and led to an international trade route called later the Silk Road. I am pretty sure that just about all of you have heard about and are aware of the Silk Road. This is basically one of the first formal developments of an extensive global distribution chain, and possibly a small shoot at the idea of a global value chain, who knows? Components from different origins put together and assembled. Did you ever think about that? Land-based, that was. A bit later, 1557, the Ming dynasty expanded, and China's maritime trade to export silk and porcelain wares emerged. and a European presence was allowed in China. The empire collaborated with, amongst other, Europe. Following decades, the Dutch and British tradesmen engaged in exchange of values with China. Some of the initiatives was definitely more on the adverse side than pure friendly trade and exchange, and the attempts to gain foothold on the Chinese coast by use of force in the early 1600s proved to be unsuccessful. Well then, if we make a great leap forward in time to a more contemporary time where we see that the past decades have shown that China has seen significant changes. You saw from the slides earlier today in the landscape of global politics and economy. According to the World Politics Review Journal, the entry into the World Trade Organization of China in December 2001 gave China a spur for a rapid transformation of the economy, from a low-cost factory to the world to a global leader in advanced technologies. Think back then. When did you first time hear about a Huawei mobile phone? Electric car brands such as Polestar, BYD, MG, which used to be a British brand, but it is now owned by a Chinese company, or Volvo for that sake. These are all brands, consumer products, where you instantly or with little effort can trace where the brand product comes from, but hardly can imagine where all the components come from throughout these global value chains. On June 22nd this year, the first Chinese car was produced in Brazil, in a Brazilian factory in Sao Paulo state. This was only a pilot model, but nevertheless, it is quite interesting because it was built by using tooling which will soon be employed for mass production as a pioneering event, I think this is. And it is based on Chinese manufacturers that make a huge footprint in Brazil with this brand new factory. JAC is Shanghai Automobile Company. And all the machinery and the metal structures of the building has been imported from China. A local supplier network to feed into the plants represents, interestingly, these global value chains. And participants are companies that you probably are aware of: Continental, Delphi, Johnson Controls, Magneti Marelli from Italy Mobile, and Siemens and Valeo. So Brazilian reports suggest that production will initially be dependent on local content from around 30% of the total value. So behind this move and decision lie a purely commercial consideration from the Chinese side. Brazil's new car market is the fourth largest in the globe. I bet you didn't know that. So, other products that actually are far more economically important for China are those that feed into other final products, as is high-tech business. So to look beyond consumer markets, we find Chinese companies already recognized as one of the world leaders in numerous business-to-business technologies, including wind turbine blades, solar panels, high-speed rail equipment, steam boilers, port terminal cranes, electric transmission equipment, to mention a few. Along the way here, China has transformed globally and transformed global supply chains, but also international diplomacy, leveraging its success to become the primary trading and development partner for emerging economies across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. But what about the rest of the story? In this discussion, I will steer away from military and related issues. Towards the end of the 1970s, China began to set a reform to upgrade its economy. At this time, its share of global economy stood at approximately 1% or less than 1% of the total global value creation. This was a starting point for a tremendous industrial growth in China, as well as China's foreign direct investment strategy, a parallel process to the Chinese reform that allowed the stimulated to seek international opportunities for growth is the development of global value chains that emerged over time. These value chains facilitate production of parts from different countries and parts of the globe for assembly of a finished product, as you know. Today, a single finished product is often a result of manufacturers assembled in from multiple countries, with each step in the process adding value to the end product. So, for instance, a fun fact here in an assembly thing. Have you ever come across this device in this technological world? I can tell you 80% of this thing is produced in China. But there is a but in the global value chain, because this tip is normally imported from Japan, Germany, or Switzerland. So we have the global value chain here also. The Chinese foreign trade has grown tremendously over time, as you saw. Over the past 25 years, according to UNCTAD trade statistics, it's a good source of trade statistics. The leading economy is China, with approximately 15% of the total value creation on the globe. The next two are the United States and Germany, with respectively 8.1 and 7.8%. China has emerged as a global player, not only by replacing Japan and the main Asian hub as a main Asian hub, but also by rivaling the United States in terms of the share of global value chain trade over total exports, which is a big concern for the United States. There are two constructs, two words I would like you to think about here in this. One is sensitivity, and the other one is vulnerability. We have seen just a glimpse of the Chinese expansion, merely as an example of the capabilities and the potential of the great power in the Far East. At the one side, China has taken a powerful role in the global economy. At the other side, China also relies on other regions and other countries for critical input, raw material to feed into its machinery. One question that remains then is, what will this lead to for regions like Europe or North America, for instance, or Norway for that sake, that for decades has enjoyed the role as global spearheads in the technological and economic development, but not anymore. In the international process of the Chinese economy, most countries on the globe have seen a significant increase of the trade with China. Also, Norway have experienced a significant trade along several dimensions. One of the sectors are the seafood industry. Those who know me know, of course, that I am quite a lot above average interested in seafood and the seafood business. But that is the case for Norway as of course. One of the sectors are the seafood exports of cod, but also farmed salmon to China. Seafood is an exclusive dish in China, and it is kind of a luxury food product seen by many Chinese. And the potential market is huge. But there is a big but. Norwegian exporters have faced numerous barriers to Chinese. And just as I speak, there are discussions going on between Norway and Russia, and Norway and China about the market access issues and trade barriers related to the seafood export to China from Norway. The Chinese has a great import from Norway of seafood. Every now and then, from time to time, it varies quite a lot because of these on and off market access issues. But I think also it is quite interesting to bear in mind that close to 75% of China's seafood imports is actually re-exported, amongst others to Brazil. At the other side, Norway and Europe and other regions rely on many dimensions of the global value chains where China plays an important role and perhaps also a dominating role. In this global play and tug between power and interdependence, and how it brings consideration to sensitivity and vulnerability of countries and regions. We experienced some of this during the aftermath of the pandemic, as you might remember. It will be important then to have some thoughts, I would say, around how quickly changes in one country, for example China, bring costly changes in another country, for example Norway or Europe, and that is sensitivity. A second consideration is a country's or region's vulnerability, that is the potential to suffer significant costs imposed by external events caused by another country, for example China. I would stop now by saying that would these considerations be critical or important for how the future global value chains can or should be set up and or governed, as seen from Norway and Europe? So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much, Frode, for this really interesting presentation or lecture. I think the historical linkages, I like that one very much, you know, looking back to the dynasties, and already at that time China was an exporter of goods to Europe and other places in the world, and now it is again in a different setting, I guess, and has a different impact on the world, which we can talk a little bit about if we have time, maybe a few minutes, or
Maybe
so
you could sit
you
here.
can come up to the whatever stage.
I will put on my other glasses so I can see you, as the wolf said to Little Red Riding Hood.
We can definitely see you.
Yes. Good.
So perhaps we should open up for some questions at the start, I think, from the audience, as we don't have that much time. If anybody has any questions, comments, please raise your hand and someone will give you a microphone, I think.
It's either
Oh, yeah.
either crystal clear or totally confused.
Don't be shy. So, okay, so maybe I'll pick up on some of the things you talked about, because I think, I mean, there's so many questions relating to China and the developments, and sometimes you don't know where to start. I mean, especially after having listened to both of you, there's so many questions that pop up. But I think one thing that you mentioned, Frode, and also I guess Hans, you also touch upon this, that you know, now the countries, we are so dependent upon each other, and China is playing such an important role in technology, digitalization, in kind of all kinds of areas. And yes, importing cars from China, for instance, electrical vehicles, and I think you know, there have been calls from people in Norway and other places that we should not be so dependent upon China, and comparing maybe to the fact, for instance, with Russian gas to Europe, especially if China were to invade, or not invade, but to go back to, well, to go to Taiwan, military, then what would happen to the world, and all the sanctions that are already ongoing between China and the U.S. I mean, the U.S. sanctions, for instance, they have also great impact on companies like Huawei, for instance, that was very big in the beginning in Norway. They have an office, I guess, in Fornebu, Telenor. There, and I mean, so all these questions, I mean, all these issues related to China and the world, I was just thinking, how, and you were mentioning, Hans, decoupling. Is it possible at all to decouple from China? And, what would the consequences be for us as, in Europe, and is there a point in doing that, starting to do that now? I don't know if he wants to just to try to answer this. It's a big question, and probably there's no clear answer, I think. But
it is a really comprehensive question, I would say. I think it would be really, really difficult to just look away from China and what China has achieved already, because we are quite dependent on all what is produced and all the services and technology and knowledge, I would say, also, that they possess and distribute and make available for us. I mean, think back when I was young, it's a couple of years ago, there was an Italian company called Olivetti who was a leader in production this technology that was used for computers at that time. And I don't know if they exist anymore, but it seems to me that China has taken over most of this technological development and role. So I don't know. I think it is difficult. But what I have a sort of sense of is that there is some movement towards, let's say, moving back to a more regional production structures, because we saw the clear evidence of the necessity for that in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic. But I don't know how that could happen, and for sure it would take time. So I don't know, Hans, if you have any comments to that also.
I have nothing to say. No, I have one to say. And of course, you, I think, ask about one of the most fundamental questions of our time. I think, are we going to continue in a world that is based on strong interconnections, which are mainly based on economic ties, or are we moving into a world where we see more division? And I think we see both. I think I agree that it would be very difficult and not very smart, especially if you're not interested in a kind of peaceful and stable and prosperous world. It's definitely not smart to go down the road of a strong decoupling or strong division. I don't think it will be feasible on any level. But having said that, we are moving into a stronger division already on some systems and also some trade alliances and trade agreements. And I think you see what happened with the 5G network agreements or disagreements, if you choose that word. That is an indication of something that's also possible to achieve if you emphasize security issues, of course, with a lot of political kind of prestige and investment behind it from some countries that have very strong interest. So I think the question is, for us, is really about what will happen also to US politics in the next few years, if we will have a return to a strong kind of protectionist, nationalist-oriented political agenda, which could very well happen in a few years. But it's also a question about what's happening with China. And of course, China, with all its advancements and successes, there's also no doubt that the country has been subject of stricter and stronger regulation, more authoritarian politics, more assertive actions internationally, which are kind of easy to rationalize from a Chinese Communist Party point of view. But it's also easy to explain why both US and the EU and NATO and the so-called West are reacting more and more kind of intensively. And that, of course, reaction will increase the more China signals a continued path towards an even stricter authoritarian rule, or a more kind of ambitious international agenda. And then we will see, for sure, also stricter regulations, which we're already seeing on investments, on trade, and on knowledge and research cooperation. Those kind of sharper frameworks are already happening. So I think it's also not something we should kind of point to as decoupling is not possible, I think, but a sharper division is certainly happening. And that could, of course, lead to kind of a cycle of stronger kind of separation between countries and value chains. And that puts, of course, countries like Norway and other countries in a very tricky dilemma, how to navigate, because if there's something we do not benefit from, it's a more divided world.
That is very true. I think you're pointing to the relations between the U.S. and China, for instance, as going to be define some of the things that are happening, and with NATO and everything, and the geopolitics that are ongoing right now. So, but I've been told we have to conclude right now. So thank you, both of you, for the words. I mean, for the presentations and for your thoughts on the future with China.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for what you have given us of ideas and your thoughts and reflections. Now there is a short break, but we are a little over time and we have time enough. But we start here sharply 20 past 10. 20 past 10. So take your break and drink some coffee and do what you would like at home there in the digital world. Thank you. Veldig bra. as in the theater, now we can hear the bell. It's time to take your seats. Then we are ready for the second section of this seminar, dealing with China and the value chain. And in this second section, we will go into the project. We had these very interesting presentations in the first part about China in more general perspectives about the superpower that China is and how China is taking more space in the global world and is influencing the world. And Arctic is a part of this world. And in this project, we are focusing on China and governance structures in the Arctic. And the reason why we are doing that, I will tell you a little about. And then I will also tell you what kind of research questions that we are asking and how we are funded, who are financing such an important project, and also a little about the model we are working according to, where we think influence could be seen. And at the end, I will present the partners of this project. And all of that I shall do in 8 minutes. So I have to start immediately. As you know, the Arctic, as most of you know, the Arctic is warming 3 times faster than what we can see in the global world in average. That means that what happens in the Arctic will influence quite many countries, all the globe. And of course, also China. China is a big nation with a lot of people, as you know, and of course a lot of areas. So what we have then said, Arctic is of course ruled by the Arctic states. But there are structures around to make sure that we try to take into account the interests of as many as possible. So we have the Arctic Council, for instance, and we will hear more about that later. But we have observer countries to the Arctic Council, and China is one. And we have also other, we could call it governance or management structures. We have something called Arctic Economic Council, and we have different of such entities. So what we are doing then is to say, does China influence on Arctic governance institutions? They are an observer in Arctic Council, and if they are influencing, how are they influencing? What might be their interest? And we are researchers, so when we discuss this, we say, it might be that we should be very happy that China and other observers are there, because maybe they will help us who are Arctic states to raise other questions than we will have done if they were not close. So but we don't know how this is. So therefore, it's so important to do research about this. And then, of course, if there is an influence, however it is important to ask the second question, how will the governance structures be influenced by such an influence of a third party? You know that in some boards, it could be that you can't discuss the important things in the board meetings. That has been said about Norwegian hospitals, for instance, because the journalists are following so much that all important decisions must have prepared before. It is impossible to think like that we have a governance structure in the Arctic where there are things that we can't see that takes place side by side. And then that will influence the governance institutions. And then we also ask a last question, and that is how these findings could give us knowledge about Arctic governance more broadly, for instance, in United Nations and in other international cooperation. So that are the three main research questions. And who are funding us? We are very happy that the Norwegian Research Council, that they have funded us. They have taken responsibility for most of the project. In addition, all the institutions who are involved are using quite much of their time and money on this. So it is something that we do together. But then it is also, let's say, interdisciplinary in the way that we try to combine knowledge from different fields. What we do at the High North Center for Business and Governance, we put mostly in what we could call management science, because we come from a business school. But then we have the other partners, for instance, FNI, that are much stronger in the political science. So that is also a part of the project. And you could see all the partners. I will not mention them, but you can see them. And then how do we think about influence? What kind of model do we have? Yeah, we believe that China could influence in different ways. It could, of course, raise initiatives that has not been raised from other partners or from others. It could also make pressures. It's possible to put pressure on some of the processes going on in the Arctic governance structure. And of course, it could also be that there are a lot of intentions, but that these intentions are more of a rhetoric nature than they are of an action-based nature. So we will have a look at that. And how could the effects be? There could be a lot of effects, but of course they could be economically. As we heard this in the first session today, that China is influencing the world trade. There is much coming from China. But at the same time, it could also be more organizational or institutional effects that we see. So we don't know very much about this yet, because we are just in the beginning of the project. And I think I stopped there because we have these three we have three packages. And these three packages, they deal with the first one that you could see, that is an international package, where we are influencing on more global kinds of cooperation. For instance, according to international laws and United Nations declarations and actions. Then the work package 2 is about the more regional influence of China. Then we are thinking about Arctic Council, Arctic Economic Council, and that kind of regional mechanisms. And the last one is about the more national influence. And then we are thinking especially on Norway, and we are thinking about Chinese engagement and investments in Norway. And if you would like to learn more about the project, and we hope you will like to learn more and be close to us, we have a website, and you could find it there on arcgov.no. There you will see papers, you will see information about what we are doing. So then you know a little about this project ArcGov. And if the world has been perfect, I would not have had to take my phone here, because then Trine Jonassen, one of the journalists at the High North News, should have come and said that she would be moderating this session. But she called me this morning and said that she is ill. She has catch a cold. So therefore, I will be moderating in the way that I am just telling what is coming now. And the second presenter you have already met, and that is Gørild Heggelund from the Fridtjof Nansen's Institute. And you heard Gørild, some of you all in the room, and maybe you also that are on your screens. And Gørild is a research professor at Fridtjof Nansen's Institute and has been working with a lot of research connected to China. Gørild has also been living in China for 16 years and has been working for decades, as she said herself, with issues dealing with China. So, Gørild, the floor is yours. Give Gørild a big hand.
Okay, so thank you.
Then I take my papers.
Thank you again for the introduction. Yes, working on China for many years. And I wanted to say, because you said about FNI, the Fridtjof Nansen Institute, I mean, of course, political scientists, but we also have people like me there. We are called, what are we called? Sinologists, or we speak Chinese and read Chinese. We have a team. We are 3 people at FNI who work on China and on different issues, and also can read and speak Chinese, which is an advantage somehow when you do research on China. And I guess, Hans, you also do the same. So it's good. So now I have to see. Look at this. Yes. So yeah, so China in the Arctic is a very generic title, actually, and I will speak a little bit about China's interests in the Arctic, and also a little bit about the Arctic Council, of course. That is my colleague Svein Vigeland Rottem, who is leading that work in the ArcGov project on the Arctic Council, so we are working on that. But I will mention it, but I will not go into great detail about the Arctic Council. But this will come later, as Frode said. You know, we are working on that on that research now, and looking into a little bit about China's ambitions in the Arctic. I mean, there are a lot of there's a lot of suspicions around what is China's real motives in the Arctic, actually, and is it there, you know, to take over the Arctic, and much literature about that as well. And also wanted to look into a little bit of the current status for activities in the Arctic. Is China really doing a lot in the Arctic already? And a few concluding remarks. So let me just begin with a brief history of China in the Arctic and China's white paper, which is the Chinese Arctic strategy or policy, actually. So you can see China signed the Svalbard Treaty in 1925. And these are, you know, just a list of developments, I guess, for China. The Polar Research Institute of China, the PRIC, they set up, they were established in 1989. So, you know, they have done polar research for quite some time in China already. And China was established a Chinese Advisory Committee for Polar Research in 1994, and also joined the International Scientific Arctic Committee in 1996. And China has carried out many scientific activities since the 1990s, actually. And also organized different expeditions with the vessel Snow Dragon, Xiaolong, since 1999. Xiaolong also goes to Antarctica, but also in the Arctic as well. And there is a research station or center, Yellow River Station in Longyearbyen in Ny-Ålesund in Svalbard. And importantly, as Frode mentioned, China has been given observer status in the Arctic Council in 2013, which is a milestone for China and other countries at the same time. There were other countries who also were given that status. China's Polar Silk Road, maybe you have heard about it. It was included in the Belt and Road initiative that has been mentioned here already in 2017. So also increasing, you know, thoughts and speculations about what China wants to do in the Arctic. And of course, the white paper in 2018 is the important and very much awaited policy for China in the Arctic. I mean, there were many statements from the Minister of Foreign Affairs and others before that. So there was a some indications of what China was thinking about the Arctic, but this policy kind of summarizes and gives a more overarching impression of what China's interests are in the Arctic. And China calls itself a near-Arctic state, which it says in the white paper that it is one of the continental states that are the closest to the Arctic Circle. This has also drawn some criticism from other countries and leaders, especially in 2018. I remember Pompeo was quite criticizing China quite heavily because of that, and also asking questions about what China is doing in the Arctic. And the Arctic is mentioned also in Chinese five-year plans. These are very important plans for China. They are kind of the guiding plans and for the country for 5 years at a time. So it also mentions the Arctic and the Polar Silk Road in the plan, which means that China will continue to work on issues related to the Arctic. So this was just a short and brief background to China's Arctic history. So what does the white paper actually say? I mean, what are the interests of China in the Arctic? It takes as its starting point the environment, climate change and research. And because it talks about global climate change and how important it is also for China, so that is kind of the starting point of the paper. But also, of course, you have shipping, sea routes, energy, oil and gas, that is of interest. And also fisheries eventually, right now, maybe not, but in the future. And also tourism, of course, and other aspects. So environmental protection and climate change, definitely, they stand out and kind of form the backdrop of China's official policy and engagement in the Arctic. And of course, polar research and science, very important for China in the Arctic, which is typical of China in general, I would say. As Hans also pointed out, research and development is a main policy in China, the importance of doing research. So there are scientific expeditions and also basic scientific climate research. They have carried out different types of climate research, scientific climate research. And here's a picture of the Snow Dragon, which is the research vessel. And China is, as I mentioned, in the Arctic Council. It's an observer nation of the Arctic Council, which means it doesn't really, it doesn't make any decisions, I guess, in the council, but it can, Chinese researchers can participate in expert groups under the different groups of the council. And you have Chinese researchers, for instance, participating in work on, excuse me, black carbon and migratory birds, and in many of those expert groups in the Arctic Council. And it's significant, I would say, for China to be part of the Arctic Council work, because it also is closely linked up with China's own domestic policies and priorities, such as climate change and environment. So there's very sort of close linkages there. Litt vodka. Ja, takk. Or baijiu, maybe. Yes. So yeah. So China again. I mean, China has very strong climate science tradition and participates also in the international climate work, for instance, like the IPCC, for instance, if you know about the IPCC. And also, as I mentioned already, they contribute to the scientific research in the task forces and the working groups. And importantly, I would say that Chinese researchers also bring home important research from done in the expert groups to China. So it will contribute to a better understanding of the climate changes actually going on in China. And I would say also that it gives China legitimacy to be in the Arctic, to have a research presence there. So it has an important aspect in that sense as well. Just a few words about Arctic and climate change. China as you know, is also highly vulnerable to climate change, and much of this is linked up with the Arctic. I mean, there are many research articles about how the Arctic can influence on China's climatic changes, actually. And recently there was on the left-hand side, you can see from 2022, the China Meteorological Administration launched or issued a report. It's an annual report that talks about China's climatic changes, and that China is highly vulnerable to climate change. And we have seen that this year as well with the floods and especially the droughts in the Yangtze River, or the tributary to the river. So China also experiences considerable warming, just like the Arctic, and actually it's more, it's happening faster. The climate warming and the climate change is happening faster in China, they conclude, than on the global or average level. And especially you can see it in the Tibetan Plateau, which is also called the third pole, and you have temperature increases and highly more precipitation in the country. So this is also linked up with the climatic changes in the Arctic. So I wanted to mention that as well. So what are China's ambitions in the Arctic, actually? I mean, there's a lot of, how should I say, like you were saying, Frode, about conspiracies, and you know, there's quite a bit of a narrative about China's interest in the Arctic and what they are going to do there. And yes, so I think if we look from China, I think actually the Arctic is not that important to China. It's not the most important, how to say, international policy area, of course, but I mean, China has many other policies or international issues that are more pressing, I think, these days. You know, you have the South China Sea, you have Taiwan, you know, the issues with the US that was mentioned in the previous section. So I think the Arctic is not the highest on the agenda, but definitely it's also interesting to China. Also, we see that China is more engaged internationally, I would say. I mean, it's more of a global, it plays an important global role in many aspects, in many organizations in the world, and multilateral, the UN, etc., and also in the Arctic. So it has definitely an interest to be there, to be at the table, to sit at the table, to have the information, to understand what is happening in the Arctic. So it is, as mentioned before, I mean, the observer status it has in the Arctic Council, the research, and the climate and environment is kind of topics that are of interest to China, of course, in the Arctic. And as I mentioned before, the 14th Five-Year Plan, of course, it is also mentioned in that. And of course, the collaboration between China and Russia is of importance, of course, in the Arctic. Is also, you know, it has an Arctic aspect. And here's the two of them. I don't know what they're enjoying. Maybe some baijiu or something, or some drink, but or water, or maybe it's not vodka. I think the small glasses. Anyway, they have a comprehensive and strategic partnership, a cooperation in the new area. That is one agreement between Russia and China, but and then also, of course, the strategic, how do you say, the agreement that was agreed upon in China right before the Olympics this year, where there was a limitless partnership between the two countries. So there is definitively a partnership there in the Arctic, and we'll come a little bit into that in the next slide, I think, on energy. But there is also, I mean, there's a lot of nice words between, you know, the Russian and the Chinese leaders. So, but also a lack of trust between the countries. We have done some research on Chinese and Russian academia and on the cooperation on the Northern Sea route. And there is actually, you know, it's not as straightforward as we would think. Anyway, so the Northern Sea route, the Polar Silk Road. I mean, the Northern Sea route is part of the Polar Silk Road. So. That is important way to shorten the time between Asia and Europe, maybe between 30 and 40% of the time. So, but then there is a lot of investments and needed in port infrastructure and technology, which China has, and so it would have to invest, I guess, in Russian Arctic. And that is an issue, I think. Doesn't really, we haven't seen that many concrete, achievements yet, but this is also based on, that, as I mentioned, there's interest, but maybe it's not so easy to carry out after all. And here, some words about the status. Does China really do that much in the Arctic, as it is described in certain media? And we find that basically the most activities are in 3 areas, and research, which I have mentioned already. And then, of course, energy is one important area. That is where some things are happening with Russia. There is cooperation on LNG, the liquefied gas and energy in Yamal. And China has ownership there in LNG and also in the tankers that carry LNG from Yamal. So there is definitely, this is the most concrete, I would say, research and energy. And also there's some shipping in the Northern Sea route, but it's also much less than has been anticipated for some time. There was a lot of writing about, shipping is going to take place in the Northern Sea routes and the Polar Silk Road, but still, it's not really happening that fast. So it could, I guess, develop, and there are plans, I think, to increase vessels. But at the time, we have seen that these are the 3 main areas of concrete activities in the Arctic from Chinese side. So here you can see a map of the Polar Silk Road, which is the red line there, going from Dalian, which is on the eastern coast in China, and to ending up in Europe. And also you can see the Belt and Road lines across the land. Anyway, I think I will just conclude. I think time is probably up, right? So for China's part, the Arctic is definitely very interesting, but as I mentioned, not on the highest on the political agenda, but it could change, of course. We don't know what will happen in the future in the Arctic with the increasing ice melting. So, and the suspicions towards China and its Arctic motives, it's hard to see that China has any other sort of different motives than just interest and to be there commercially and for the time being. I mean, militarily it has been mentioned, but China doesn't really have any territorial interests in the Arctic. I mean, it's not like the South China Sea. You cannot compare these two at all. So, but anyway, I think, that recently or in past few years, there has been more discussions about, the geopolitical situation, and it has kind of moved into the Arctic even more. That because China is interested in the Arctic, the U.S. and China, they have a but not so great relationship. So things have moved into the Arctic, peaceful area. So this we will have to follow the developments there to see. And as mentioned, the actual number of projects and investments are quite moderate in the Arctic so far. So we'll have to follow those, and we do have a couple of projects also that do that. We're looking into the Polar Silk Road and also the investments and economic investments in the northern areas by China. So research, energy, and shipping are the most concrete. And research, of course, gives legitimacy to Arctic presence, China's presence in the Arctic. Even stronger. So, but I also wanted to say that there are possible, areas of cooperation with China in the Arctic and through the Arctic Council. So some of those areas, environmentally, it's a good way to cooperate, both on mercury, for instance, and also black carbon, which is also something that Norway works with China on already, bilateral. So these are some points that they could be have impact on China's own domestic environmental developments, I think. So this is it. So thank you very much for paying attention.
Thank you very much. The last presentation in this section will be done by Anders Edstrøm. Anders is a PhD student, a research fellow at the Heinrich Center, and he has been working for some years with China. He has even been in China. He has been studying at East China Normal University in Shanghai, and Anders has done his master thesis about China and by the cooperation between China and Russia especially. And Anders is connected to Work Package 3, and that is the Chinese interest and influence in Arctic governance mechanisms connected to investments in Norway. So please, Anders.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you for this opportunity to tell a little about what I'm working with at the moment. And as you mentioned, I was in China, in Shanghai, on my exchange there a few years ago. And the picture, which is the background for the seminar, I took on one of the river boats there. And I was absolutely impressed by the city and learning about the investments that China are doing. And the scale of everything impressed me so much. And back then I was writing my master thesis on the Chinese investments in the Russian Arctic, in the Yamal LNG project, and how this could influence on the energy security of China. And now I'm very happy that I could continue looking into Chinese investments, and now also in the Arctic. So I will try to tell the state of my work on the state of the art of Chinese investments, to put it that way. First, very short about how my PhD project will be developing, and it will be developed across 4 articles and a summary paper. The first article will try to capture what is actually known from research at this time on Chinese investments abroad, and also specifically in the Arctic. The second one will be developed from a Norwegian perspective. How does Norway perceive and work with Chinese investments? How are they encouraged? How do we discuss them? What is actually our approach to Chinese investments in Norway? And the article number 3 will look into specific cases of Chinese investments in the Arctic. And the article number 4 will be more directed directly to the ArcGov project to try to discover, do actually these investments that we've been looking into have the capacity to influence on or contribute to Arctic governance mechanisms? And here, this is also my last slide, but here I'll spend quite a lot more time. What I'm going to answer here is why do we find Chinese investments interesting? And why even looking into Chinese investments in the Arctic? What is special about the Arctic in this case? And something about what does theory predict? What does internationalization or international investment theory say about investments? And how do the Chinese investments fit into this, from including other discussions that are going on about Chinese investments? And then I will contribute a little with what I will do to develop the paper even further from this point. And I hope that I will have some time to go into this model, because I find it quite interesting. It's one of the many details I would love to share. So then, from a theoretical perspective, it is assumed that, okay, if you want to invest in another country, you should have some kind of ownership advantage. You should have some kind of strength when you go into the new market. And with developing countries, as China is defined, it's been difficult to say exactly what is the strategic or the ownership advantage of a Chinese firm going international. And it's been suggested that, okay, they do have some advantages, but they're more difficult to define. They could be tied to the ability of learning, or their strategic innovation or organizational innovation, and so on. But it's still difficult. And then the discussion has been from a theoretical perspective, do the theories related to the business motives actually hold true in relation to China? Or should they be amended? Should they be changed? Should they be discarded and develop completely new theories for Chinese investments? And when I mentioned the OLI paradigm, for instance, it's the ownership. So you should have some strategic advantages. And then L is for location. There should be some attractive things to find in a new country. And it should be internal. You should want to internalize it. So that's the I, instead of relying on the market to buy these services or buy these products from the market. So you should want to put it into your own organization. And from this, they have derived, okay, there are perhaps from business perspective 4 motives for internationalizing. It could be that you want to seek interesting resources in a new country. So resource-seeking motivation. It could be that you want to find a new market. So you're seeking a market. Or it could be that you want to seek some efficiency that you find in this market, lower costs or better production and so on. Or it could be that you're seeking ownership. Look, please. Yes. Okay, I will come back to that as soon as suddenly I froze. Anyway, so you're seeking some economic related objective. This is the basic point. And then you could see that, okay, it looks like actually here there are different motives for internationalizing for China. And some people suggest that they could be closely related to institutions. And institutions are defined as the rules of the game. So by North in 1990, he wrote it's the rules of the game. And it could also be said that they are structures put in place by humans to control or to confine our activities somehow. And we could, for instance, mention the Belt and Road Initiative as such in the institution, I would assume, because here they have some kind of defined things that the state would be interested in from a policy perspective, which gives guidance to international investments. And it's when doing these investments, it's been discussed, okay, how much is actually state governed, how much is actually business motives. And in this kind of cross-section between the state motives and the incentives that could be given to companies, or also obstacles, this model could be also derived. So let's say a private company could meet some challenges if they are not following the institutional guidance, or if they're acting according to the economic interest of the business only, for instance. While a state-owned company could face different home country institutions. And they would have other guidance for their investments, which could also give some kind of advantages when going abroad. And here, therefore, with this, they do different things when going abroad. The state-owned companies and the private companies into also if they invest in developed countries or developing countries. And if they go from a state-owned enterprise into developed countries, they could turn into being market competitors. While in developing countries, their strength from China could make them actually into the market dominator. While a private company could act according to the more business rationale, perhaps with less of the state support, perhaps, and it's seen that they are often more market seekers or market explorer in these markets. So institutions are said to matter. The traditional theory is mostly said to hold true in some sense. I'm sorry that I tried to go so deep into the nitty-gritty, but still, they say that the existing theory seems to hold true. But then again, more knowledge is needed in other contexts, and I will work with collecting what is known in the Arctic context now. So if any of you have any articles that you find interesting on this topic, or if you have any cases that are relevant, I would be very happy also to hear them and to look forward to conversations ahead and to work further with this. How the traditional theories fit with the other perspectives, for instance, from institutional theory and so on. So thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you very much, Anders. We are looking forward to read all the papers. Doing a PhD means that you have to write papers, and for us who shall read them, we are looking very much forward to that. Very, very interesting. What are other drivers for China if they go to the Arctic than if they go other places? Are there any? We don't know anything about that. And as Anders said, if you know about articles or if you have a business case that you think he should look at, then inform him. The time is running very, very fast when we hear such nice presentations. But if there are, so I will not ask you to come here because then we will run out of time. But if there are any questions immediately here, to Gørild or Anders, even to me or others, you could raise them now. Everything is clear. Could it be better? Could it be better? Thank you. Then we take a break until 11:15, and we start sharply then. Thank you. Per Arild, vi klar. Ja. Ja da, jeg introduserer jo, ser vi. Okay, now we are ready to the last session of this seminar. And let me try to put you into what has happened. We started with an overview of China and China's engagement in many ways in the global world. And we had a picture given by Nansen, by Frode, that China is increasing its presence all around the world, even in Latin America. Frode was stressing for us, and it was about car productions. Then in the second part, we discussed this very interesting project about what happens in the Arctic when it comes to governance. How are the governance structures in the Arctic influenced, and does China have a role there? And if they have a role, what is that role? And now we move into more Arctic practice, I would say, because you know that we are in the Arctic now. Bodø is an Arctic city. We don't use that name so much in Norway. We call it High North because we are focusing on resources and people. Very often when we talk about Arctic, we are thinking about a harsh climate and about polar bears and these things. But it is in the Arctic. And here, located in the city of Bodø, we have a lot of interesting companies. And now you will learn from two of them. And one is First Scandinavia and also the Newton Room. And that is headed by Per Arild Konradsen. So, Per Arild, tell us a little about the companies and especially about what you're doing in China. The floor is yours.
I will. Thank you, Frode.
And applause for Per Arild.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. My name is Per Arild Konradsen, and I'm the founder of the company called First Scandinavia. And the aim of this company is to stimulate young kids' interest into science, physics, mathematics, biology, and all these subjects in a practical way. Because I realized 22 years ago that not all kids in Norway, and I realized later on that not all kids worldwide, they are not hit of what's happening in a normal classroom. So we decided to create a concept called the Newton concept. I will tell you a few words about that, and that has become a worldwide concept right now, because we realize that the challenges among young children trying to succeed in school are the same all over. So, but the theme and the challenge I got from Frode was to give some tips and tricks how to succeed in China, and I think I'm the most inexperienced when it comes to presence in China, because we started in China 2018, and I stayed like 200 days in China in 2019 in Beijing, Shanghai. So, but still and then the COVID came, but we are now ready to continue if the quarantine rules are changing a little bit more than they are today. It's still 7+3, so we are waiting. We're waiting now. This is this one. This is what we deliver: happy children that succeed in the classroom. And the point is, this is not a classroom; it's outside the classroom. It's a Newton room. It's a science room that I don't have to explain all the details about. But it's practical science, and the pedagogical building brick in this. It is, to be honest, in a Newton room, it's like a scientific version of 7-Eleven. It's the same all over. So if you're going to establish a Newton room in China, in Beijing, as we have done right now, or in Abu Dhabi, or in Berlin, it's the same rules. But there is one critical question, that is, this is curriculum-based. It has to be linked into the curriculum. If not, no teacher will touch it, because there are only 190 school days a year, and it has to be linked tight into curriculum. And when we come to China, I will get closer to that, but when we came to China, we were very nervous about does the curriculum-based system we have fit into China. And the pedagogical building brick we have in the Newton concept is called a Newton module. A Newton module can be a subject related to physics, biology, sea harvesting, minerals, aviation, of course. And we have a educational partner in Beijing called UChange, and they are responsible for creating, translating everything we have into Chinese. And we delivered like 2 modules to them, and we gave them 3 weeks to translate it and to see if it fit to the Chinese curriculum. And there were 2 comments, only 2 comments. It fitted perfectly, and we had to change it here in Bodø because they think the module was not that investigating, because we are practical investigating teaching in the Newton modules. You, Frode, again, you asked me to give some tips and tricks. They are not only based from what I have experienced in China. I will say they are more based on the experience I have from 3 years in the Emirates in Abu Dhabi, in the Arabic world. But it's many ways the same thing. So this is the Newton Flight Academy in Beijing at Tsinghua University High School. I think you have heard about that in the university. And it's a classroom where the kids, the students, learn to fly. But it's not learning to fly that is the main point here. The main point here is to have a subject that is linked to the real world, and this is aviation. So they learn all about physics, the mathematics, everything that is related to aviation, navigation, of course, and they learn that they apply all the theory and the flight plans that they are developing into a perfect flight that they are conducting themselves. Both girls, of course, and boys. So then the question is, how did we end up in China? And it's Boeing. The biggest partner we have is the Boeing company based in Seattle. But Boeing, China is a big market for Boeing, and we have a contract with them for 5 more years now. And we are doing social responsibility projects with them all over. I think we are in 12 countries in Europe, and we have something in the US. And we have a Berlin office of counting 10 people, and we're doing the same, the Newton concept. So Boeing said, and that was a real advantage for us, because little for Scandinavia alone in China, we are nothing. So we have been moving in the shadow of Boeing. And all those 200 days in 2019, because it was extremely important for us to find the right partner. So we were traveling around, driving cars, visiting 6, 7, 8, 9 cities, universities, high schools, whatever, trying to find the right partner that had the same ambition that we had. And actually, the last meeting we had after driving around for 10 weeks was Tsinghua University. So, and what we learned was a lot. I will say we travel around, and here is like one of the lectures I did, and it's always a challenge to have a translator, and at the end the translator, he's better than you. He can do the whole story for you. So which is in many ways good and in many ways bad actually. But we ended up at Tsinghua, and as I mentioned, a lesson learned was that I stayed there for 200 days, close to, and I stayed there for 2-3 weeks in a row, and then back to Bodø for 1 week, and then to look at my family, look after my family, and then back to China. And the common comment I got was, "You are one of the few Western people coming here for trying to do business, and you prefer to stay here." Normally, Western companies, when they come to China, they stay here for like, they come to Beijing like Sunday evening, Monday morning, meetings Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, dinner, and heading back home. And then you start to email again. And then perhaps you invite this Chinese company back to Norway, or you travel back again in 2, 3, 4 months. But you have to stay there, to be a part of the society, to be a part of the tribe you are dealing with. So what happened with me was that they were asking me, Mr. Pierre, what are you going to do this? You have no meetings today, Thursday, Friday. No, I have no meetings. What are you doing? Yeah, I'm at the Boeing office. What are you doing in the weekend? I have no plans. And then you start to be invited back home to people. And you start to being invited back home to decision makers. And then you learn a lot. And then you really learn a lesson, how to behave and how to do your next step, which was very extremely useful for me. So it's like this one always. My plan was to stay there. With Boeing was easy. They are a big company, and you realize very quickly that Boeing was not the best brand in China at that time, and they are still not, because we have this terrible accidents with Lion Air and the Ethiopian Air planes that crashed, and China has then decided to buy a lot of 737 Maxes. So it's like a lecture of 2-3 hours. So we had to deal with a lot of challenges, of course. But luckily, Boeing, they said we will never stop the project with you guys, because you will be important for us in the future. And then we had some ethics discussions, of course. Why are we going to be useful idiots for Boeing, or what's going to happen next? But we just decided. I decided, together with my board, that okay, we have started this, and I think I skipped one slide here. It's always like this. A lot of people say, I will try to get it done. I will try to do this, and I will try to do that. But in my company, when we start something, we do it. There is no try. So I think that's an important lesson learned for us, and then we always take that with us when we are discussing new projects at First Scandinavia. This picture, what was that? Okay, in being invited back home to decision makers, which is a part of it. And we also I also learned this very quickly. I learned that before in Abu Dhabi, of course. But being a Norwegian is not always the best thing when you are in a foreign culture and in different countries and in the Chinese world or Arabic world or wherever. Don't always be a Norwegian, be a world citizen. And that is nothing you can learn at school. You have to be there, and you have to be there, and there is a lot of protocols you have to deal with, and you have to learn how to be quiet now and then, which is very important. But I have seen a lot of Norwegians that do not. They always have to speak loudly about the way they do it. And it's very easy, and it's very perhaps stupid statement from me, but it is very important to understand that in all aspects of business abroad. And people, they keep, I have to do this one at the end. People keep asking me, okay, you were traveling around for 200 days, you meet a lot of people. I do the same in the Emirates. Meet a lot of people. How do you know the names of everyone? How do you systemize your network? Because it's all about building networks. It's all about being a part. We are a small company, and it's all about be a part of the tribes you want to be a part of in China. So I take care of course, I do take care of all my business cards, and then I organize them in systems like this. I don't want to show you all the names, but I can show these. For instance, organization, the December 9th organization we had in 2019. It's a lot of people. And when you have like 7, 8, 9 organizations like that in China, and you have to pick the names up again now, because now we are applying for visa again to get there. it's very important to have this system. But not only this, I also have this one always. People keep asking me, how do you relate to names? So I have this system with all the names and how they are related to each other, the email address, everything. So now when we are picking up and applying for visa again, extremely important, just a tip for you guys, just to very quickly get on board again, onboarding your projects, wherever it's like in Abu Dhabi or in Berlin. This is the way I survive when it comes to all the names. And you realize when you have this map, how much and how easy you forget. So it's like, and another very important thing to say about all these names, when you saw all these business cards, many of those people are perhaps not important at the moment. But still, after 1, 2, 3 months or years, they are important because they have a changed position, they have changed company, they have changed this and that. So you have to treat everyone equally immediately when you meet with them. So final remarks, I only had 10 minutes. Be patient, look around you, and understand where you are and the culture. Very easy. This is so easy that it's like, in many ways, embarrassing to show you these slides. Spend time in China. Don't stay there only for 2-3 days. Head back home to Bodø, and then 2-3 days. That you will never do business that way. Find the right partners. Very important. You can't be alone in China. You need to find the right partners, and that's the reason why we invested 200 days in China back in 2019. And we are continuing right now. Build, organize, and maintain your networks over time. Maintain over time. That means I've been writing emails from 12th of March to up to yesterday to everyone I think I want to have in my loop when I get back to China as soon as possible. Be a world citizen, we spoke about that. And which I have also learned from all these years, 22 years, there is a lot of protocols. Dinners, formal receptions, tea parties, and whatever you have to attend to with your business suit and your tie, and of course, important. But in the end, be yourself, because all the others also want to be themselves after all the protocols. And that's what was I learned when I was staying in China for so long time. And embarrassing, last point, also perhaps, but learn proper English and attend discussions. That means that we had that discussion in my company because I brought some people there, and the English was not, my English is not 100% either, but they were more like 40%. And then they get silent in all the discussions, and when you want to attend, you have to be a part of all the discussions going on. So I think that's perhaps a stupid advice, but and it's perhaps more for my generation and not the young people sitting around here. So Frode, I don't know if I answered your question, but that was all from me. 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Arild. Yeah, you do that. You did that because you tell how you were doing your work, your actions, to be able to do such a Newton room in Beijing. I understand that has been demanding, being there so long time. And I saw from the way you are working very systematically. I was so impressed by all the calls you have and all of that. And maybe that is also for us in the research. That is the way we are doing, maybe not always only names, but documents and different things. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you. And then we continue. And the next speaker is, he is a real Chinese and a real citizen of Bodø. So, Stephen Fu, you are very much welcome. And I have said that each should present themselves. And you will do that, but I could say that you are the managing director of the Orient holding, and you have a very good education, not at least from Nord University. The floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. My Chinese name is Fu Anlung, but I'm Baptist Stephen, real name. My parents was Catholics. I have a presentation. I called myself as a butterfly in the winterland. There's a famous Norwegian song by the local famous artist Halvdan Sivertsen. And many people ask me worldwide, how can a Chinese-speaking Norwegian living in Norway doing business in China? So I said, everything is possible. I'm born in Hong Kong. I'm 58 years old. I've been living here in Bodø since '87. So now I must call myself a local Bodøværing. As Frode said, I was a student in North University. I'm actually educated as CPA, Norwegian CPA accountant. I'm not educated in trade or financial, but a CPA accountant. I've been working here in Norway, in north of Norway, after education. I was born in Hong Kong, grown up in Fredrikstad. It's south in Norway. And as you can hear my Norwegian, it's not North Norwegian, it's South Norwegian. So that's a funny story, because my father was working for a Norwegian company. And my mother wanted to go to Vancouver. There's a lot of Hong Kong Chinese in Vancouver. But my parents went to Fredrikstad on vacation. And they chose Fredrikstad either than Vancouver. So, 87, I've been in Bodø since then. I'm working the first 10, 15 years, I'm working as financial manager, economist. I was also a partner in a business consultant company before I started and founded Orient Holding with different business area. And I have done this very simple. I used my background to do this. Because I had some friends who said, you speak Chinese, you had friends in China, why not do business with China? This was in 1998. And that was interesting to see the growth of export. That was from 2002. It increased a lot. And I was with that wave of new business. So I call myself Norwegian Chinese. I speak three language fluent. And I'm very practical. Accountant are normally not practical guys, but I'm very practical, operative, and structured. These are some photos. Normally I said I can be in Shanghai in the walking street one day. Next week, I'm in the mountains in North Norway skiing with my daughters. I can live in both countries. I like both. I like meatballs and I like hot pot. So Orient Holding, this is pretty funny. We have main office in Bodø. We have 6 persons here. And we have our Chinese rep office in Jongsan. And we have office south in Fredrikstad. This is my operational tool. I started this in 2005, the office in Jongsan. Zhongshan is a small Chinese city with 4 million. So every time I talk about Norway, I talk about Scandinavia, because 5 million are nothing. It's not everything under 1 million is not city in China. But Zhongshan is a very nice city, well developed. The founder of the Republic of China is from that city. Sun Yat-sen is his name. There's a big statue of this guy in the main road in Zhongshan. I have friends there. So when I started the business in 2002, I was traveling 150 to 200 days in China. And I understood it doesn't work. I must have local. And I remember it was a slogan, think global, act local. So I started to build up this office. Today we are 16 employees. Actually, we have 4 in Dalian, in northeast, for shipbuilding. And I have done this with Norwegian touch. I'm a very structured person. And I said, you cannot hire a lot of Chinese and say, here is some order, do it. Because then I will say that it's out of control. And I'm a control freak. I cannot sleep if I don't have control. So we build up a system, and we are certified with ISO. So this is a Norwegian company, Orient, but with rep office in Zhongshan. China has a system with foreign rep office. So these our employees are hired by us, not by a second partner or some. I'm the boss in the company, and the loyalty is to me. And that's very important, because loyalty in China by hired employees, it lasts only till they get a better offer from some other companies. When I say with Norwegian touch, we have been member of the ethical trade organization in Norway since 2007. We were the first small, medium-sized company who became member. And it's because this has been questioning about ethical trade from day one, and we have been doing business with rather big companies in Norway who have been focusing on this from day one. This is something I learned from the Norway University. Process, structure, and make it matrice. So we have a structure. All process in the office is described and certified by TÜV Rheinland. And I call it untouchable. They are Germans, and they don't sell certificate. They do real audit. And every second year we have audit, and they go through all the orders, all the process we have. And why I said our office is a tool, I cannot do business from office in Bodø in China. They do it. It's my right arm. That's the fact. We have 3 different business areas. This is one of our real, what I call it, innovation. We build service vessels for Norwegian salmon farmers. They also been sold international, since Norwegian service companies are world leading. So this was founded in 2008, And we sold it in 2011 to a company in Trondheim, Moon Marine. They are a leading company today. They have over 20% of the market for service vessels. So we have sold nearly now, I think it's around 90 boats. This year we ship out 8 vessels from China to Norway. And in the beginning, in 2008, I have a lot of friends in salmon farming. They laughed. They said, this, no chance. You can do furniture, you can do garments, you can do consumer goods, but this is something. So we did what we call OEM, Original Equipment Manufacturer. This is an international word for the design is Norwegian. The old equipment components is international. It's Palfinger crane, it's Japanese Furumo electronics. Everything is international. But it's built in Dalian in China with our inspectors who do all the quality control. And this is not my idea. Apple did this from the beginning. This is not an American mobile. This is made of Foxconn. I've been outside the factory in Shenzhen. It's like a fortress. Who will say this is a Chinese? They are saying this is designed in California or something. But it's Chinese, actually. We do the same thinking. We build this boat. Actually, it's a lot of them in the Norwegian coast. I don't need to tell them this is made in China and produced in Dalian. The other project we started, this is also a little bit crazy project. A lot of people laughed. And it's modular housing. So this is our building we build in outside Bodø. It's a place called Steigen. The idea, also not mine. I saw this actually in London. They call it container housing. And I was very inspired of this because housing problems, every year the politician says in Norway, oh, we need more housing, blah, blah, blah. But I waited over 10 years because I knew it will cost hell a lot of money. Norway has one of the highest standard building code. And this is only one company in Norway who can give you this approval. It's Sintef Byggforsk in Trondheim. We have used over 20 millions to get the certification of the technical standard for steel modular house. And therefore I say crazy, because if I know how difficult it was, the economist will say, no, don't do it. But we did it. So today we have 3 different sizes. We use a standard sea container size, but we do 100% finished apartment in the modules, because this is not a standard sea container. It looks have some size, but it's not. If you try to do apartment with a standard sea container, you will never get approval as a living house in Norway. This is our latest building, built in outside Tromsø, in a place called Finnsnes. And you cannot see it's modular. We have built it in the building. So actually we have built 5 blocks in North Norway with modules from China. And it's a little bit funny that we bring them from this builder factory outside Shanghai. And I will not say to people this is made in China, but everything inside is made in China. But all the components, same as the boats. We use Norwegian doors and windows. It's IKEA kitchen. It's IKEA bathroom furniture. So when people come into the apartment, they will not see this is made in China. I call it ensemble in China, maybe it's more correct word. Can you run the... I have a video of the building process.
Vi har jo et samarbeid med Senja boligstiftelse, der at vi sammen bygd 41 leiligheter på Finnsnes. Vi har 30 toroms, og så har vi 12 treroms. Og det har vært en virkelig stor etterspørsel etter dette på Finnsnes. Vi startet for en tid tilbake. Vi produserer moduler som vi setter inn i et system som unikt i norsk byggeskikk. Vi har et klimaskall rundt bygget som vi blåser inn varme, som gjør at beboerne får svært lave strømutgifter. Dette et særdeles sikkert bygg. Bygget sprinklet innvendig og utvendig. Brandvarsling med strobelys og sirene. Vi har komfyrvakt, vi har vannstopp, så folk ivaretatt med sikkerhet overalt her. Hver leilighet egen brandcelle, så dette sikkert bygg, og det maks sikkert for folk som skal bo her på Finnsnestunet. Nå vi ferdig med 41 leiligheter, og vi har hatt et kjempegodt samarbeid med Senja boligstiftelse. Og nå vi i mål. Samtlige leiligheter utleid, og vi vil få et kjempebra bomiljø her på Finnsnestunet.
So we have few, but some quite big customers. We do partnership. So this has been several of the customers here have been our customers for over 15 years. For 2 years ago, we did something I'm pretty proud over. Norway was closing down March 12th. I got a telephone call from the purchase director in Health North, the government, and he asked me, "Oh, you have an office in China. Can you import PPE, personal protection equipment?" Actually, we have done this before for a wholesaler in Norway called Maske. So we have the competence and we have the people to do it in China. And 2 hours later, the Norwegian broadcasting NRK called me and asked, are you importing PPE? I asked them, how do you know this? They said, you have only one customer. So I didn't know Norway was running out of PPE. And they sent me some huge orders. And I didn't know what we were facing because it was a chaos in China. All factories have full production. The Americans was running around buying all PPE they could get with cash. No SWIFT transfer. They travel with a lot of American dollars in the suitcase. But at the end, because our office did everything correct, we imported 45 tons of PPE to Norway. Everything was certified, approved, and delivered to Norwegian hospitals and municipals. So I don't have any advice because it's so much. I have 10 minutes. But if you want to do business in China, it's nothing called success. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue. It counts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you. I am so impressed being a researcher to hear about those who are managing to build things from here in China, as we saw that Per Arild was doing, that they are doing, and also Stephen Food that is building things here in the Arctic based on materials from China. That has been impressive. We are a few minutes too late, but there will be a lunch. I can say so, for sure it will be. And I'm very happy to introduce the last speaker, and that is Elise Chen. Elise Chen, she came from Shanghai in the 80s. She has education from Shanghai University and Oslo University. And Elise, you have been working in so many different positions, strengthening the ties between Norway and China, that I shall not use time in going into them, but just to tell all the audience that Elise is now the managing director of the Norwegian Chinese Chamber of Commerce and the Heggelund Center for Business and Governance. We are a member also of the Norwegian Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and that is for researchers who are trying to understand both businesses and societal development. It's very, very smart to be very close to the chambers of commerce, because there you meet others who are working really to establish contact between countries. So, Elise, it's a pleasure to welcome you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And maybe I stay there. Yes, thank you so much, Frode and Anders, for inviting me to this very, very interesting seminar. This is actually the second time I was participating. First time was in 2019 in the spring, and due to the COVID, so it has been several years. As Frode presented, actually my work started with culture exchange between Norway and China. The reason was I came to Norway in 80s and started studying in the university in Oslo. After actually also finished my engineer education from Shanghai. My enthusiasm actually created in beginning of 90s. I saw more and more Norwegian media present China. Something is very positive. Another thing is not correct with the facts in China. So I have a kind of feeling that instead of Norwegian people and the society to be influenced by the Norwegian media without to know how really China is. So my idea starting to bring Norwegian children to China is also opportunity, because my daughter oldest daughter, Chen, today is the concert master in the Norwegian Opera and Ballet Orchestra. She started in the Bodø Music Institute with Stefan, very good. The Bodø Music Institute is actually in Norway the best music institute, private, and growing a lot of talents. And I was, engaged as a parents group leading for junior orchestra. So I think my idea was, why not bring the Norwegian orchestra, the children's chamber orchestra, to China and starting exchange and bring Norwegian children to China and bring the Chinese children to Norway, because of course a lot of things need to learn from the Western, from Norway. I was so impressed of Norwegian, a lot of things. As you see, my name is Elise Chen. Actually, my name Elise was my real name is Li Hui Chen. And Elise was, I think Li Hui is really not easy for Norwegian people to pronounce. And either as I need to accept to be called wrong, or I need to correct every time. So my husband is musician, so he studied in the Agde Musikhøgskole with violin, but has a piano as an obligatorisk instrument. So he was playing the Fuch Elise from Beethoven. So that's why it's very easy that I choose Elise. Was wonderful name. So that's why my full name is Elise Li Hui Chen in the Folkeregisteret. That's a little bit, background. As Per Arild mentions, when you need to integrate to a society, you need to, as soon as possible, to go into and to dare to open yourself to the people and to get communication. So that's why my main topic today actually was how important the dialogues between China and Norway, between China and the Western, is so important, because previously so many impressive speakers really impressed me a lot. So I will not repeat the, in the special areas, but this dialogues and communication is really touch every area. If you do some successfully business with China and also for Chinese in Norway, and to more and more dialogues, close dialogues, dare to open yourself, and communication, over-communicate is so very important. It's really very important. So here is example in called paper dialogues. You see the two figure of people. One is professor in China, Chinese Academy of Fine Art in Beijing. Another is Norwegian-Danish Karen Bitt Weile. We called calligraphy. This is a paper cutting artist. And those two, we established a very, very nice project in 2013. 2013 is in the period of the Peace Prize, the Peace Prize for Liu Xiaobo. So China and Norway actually, without any communication officially, from 2010 until 2017. But this project we called Paper Dialogues, actually to encourage the government side to establish more and more dialogues, to understand each other countries' background, and more communication and with respect, with dialogue is really the key. So this project established in 2013, and I was very lucky, happy to to be asked to be a project manager. This project was funded by officially by actually Norwegian embassy in China. But you know, it's the media is very complicated, so we need to prepare whole project under radar. So I said to the embassy that I know you are the biggest support, but we cannot have your logo in our website. So here is the paper dialogues, and the preparation went very well. The only thing is that we cannot use the arena, which is officially. So in Beijing, we used Today Art Museum, which is private. And in Shanghai, we used Shanghai Liu Haisu Art Museum. And we really had very good exhibition in 2014. The day, 5th of October 2014, is the day for China-Norway diplomatic relationship in 60 years. That the opening happened in Today Art Museum by Norwegian Ambassador Svein Sæthe. It's really wonderful, and we got a very good article from Aftenposten for the culture side. And it's actually not so very often that Aftenposten writing very positive things about China, but that time was really very nice. And then after 2-3 weeks, we have 2 weeks exhibition in Shanghai, and touring come to Norway in 2015, first in Vigeland Museum in Oslo, and then in the Trondheim Kunstindustrimuseum in several months. So every time, those exhibition is really very successful. I just tell you a little bit about, you see, the paper dialogues is encouraged to establish more dialogues. And we have the dragon as the motive. You know, in China, the dragon is very positive figure. We called Chinese as 龙的传人. We are the arvtaker til a dragon. 龙 is the dragon in Chinese. 龙的传人, kind of arvtaker. But in Nordics and Norway, the dragon is very powerful, but in a way a little bit evil, right? Correct? So then we had. Thank you. I just to explain that my voice is very awful, so excuse me with this sound. Usually my voice is not like this. Okay. Here is about 2 artists. They don't speak each other's language. The Norwegian-Danish artist Karen Bitveire, of course, don't speak Chinese. And Chao Xiaoguang, a professor, of course, and he actually don't speak English either. So they cannot communicate with the language, but they became very, very good and close friends, actually, with each other through the artists' exchange work. And Professor Chao Xiaoguang's artwork is talking about the Chinese figure of the dragon and how the dragon became the dragon. It was 2 sides. Another side is dragon's original, what before we became the dragon. What is that? It's a long history, actually. So I will not go through that. And this side is the Chinese dragon looks like. And also use the artistic with the shadow effects, which is really very nice. It's a 9 meter long of this artwork. And with the current bit virus work, it was about Dragon X, 7 Dragon X. The first 3 Dragon X is a whole starting from meteorology, the Norwegian and the Scandinavia, the story, and until you see this is more, today, and how the Norwegian society developed. And you can see the oil was dropped down. Can you see the top on the left? I can. Okay. Anyway, how can I use this for? Oh, yeah, of course. Here is oil drop down. And can you see the 3 flowers? The figure. Can you find something here? Here you can see the figure. It's a Ibsen. Here is Edvard Munch, and this is Edvard Grieg. Norway, we're talking about Norway has only 4 million. When I came here, it's only 4 million. Now it's 5 million. Even Norway is a very small country. The size cannot compare with China, but very impressive. Little Norway actually has very, very high intelligence people. And China, before I came to Norway, I already know those 3. With Ibsen and Edvard Munch and Edvard Grieg. And also Norway is doing so very well. So this is also through the paper artwork to tell Chinese and tell people how the Norwegian society is today. And you also see the stairs up. This is talking about the Norwegian, how developed the several decades, years, actually. So very impressive. So I can especially have a seminar about this project, but just to indicate how important that is. So those 2 became very good friends. It's very important. Then I tell you that because of my actually start with working with culture projects, also in Norway. We started with the Chinese Culture Festival in 2004, when China-Norway 50 years diplomatic relationship. And in 2007, and with expanded bigger and bigger, and we have only arranged in the very good concert location in the Concerthus, Oslo, and the Opera House. Actually, it is also have been in the Stavanger Concerthus, in Tromsø Kulturhus, and also Bergen Grieg Hall. So in 2007, we had a Norwegian and a Chinese with Olympic Games, to have a very good competition med utøvere fra Norge og Kina. And this is in the Mongolia radio choir come to Norway and cooperate with Norwegian choir. And we have, and when they come to Norway, so actually they was living in the Norwegian families to get more opportunity to know about Norwegian society and the Norwegian culture. And then had a return visit 2008 back to the Inner Mongolia. That was very, very valuable. And this is the 2010's program. So just, kind of a picture. As you see here, oops, sorry. Yeah. No problem. I want to just show maybe here is the Norwegian people because it's a very, very famous Chinese actors was involved and had Ibsen's, yeah, thank you. Those is very famous. And they have Ibsen's The Dollhouse in Nationaltheatret. So that's, and actually I think it's very important to have more dialogues, communication, so let's together share the future. So I really hope that China and Norway will have more and more cooperation together without to be affected too much with geopolitical.
Thank you very much, Elise. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this was a wonderful kind of conclusion of this seminar, that dialogue is so very important. And I like this paper dialogue, because for me that symbolizes that we could do things together even though we don't understand really everything that is going on. We could do what we are clever at, and of course we will always listen to each other, and we will take care of our own interests. And so I think this was very, very great. I should have wished that we had 3 more hours so that we could have discussed deeper. But to be honest, the ArcGov project has quite many years ahead. We will not conclude the project before summer 2025. So there will be a lot of opportunities for dialogues. And I hope you will be close to us. Connect to arcgov.no and see for news. And if you don't find any news, send me a mail, send Anders a mail, or any others in the project a mail, and ask about what is going on. But because we are working all the time. Thank you for coming, listening here. Thank you who are sitting at home all around the world. Maybe I did not mention this, but there are people from more than 20 countries that have participated in this seminar. We have been about 150 people altogether. So it has been an attractive seminar because it's an important topic and important topics that we have been discussing. So thank you who contributed. Thank you to all, and all of those who are in the room. You could now have a lunch. And I hope you also will have a good evening, maybe in China, or that in other places that you will have a good day. So thank you all, and I hope that we will see each other soon. Thank you.